I appreciated perfection, meaning that they would play like thousands of shows, right? And then every time they get together, I watch, like each act has a coach. And then they watch the video and they scrutinize everything. I mean, after 1,000 shows, like, can you just like slack off, But they don't, and they're so serious. And I was also disciplined. Like, it was like the world I had never seen before. And also, it's about perfection, but also about flexibility and performing, right? You perform for the audience.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman. This podcast strives to inspire you through the personal stories of a diversity of musicians with in-depth conversations and great music that reveal the depth and breadth to a life in music. Meg Okura is an award-winning jazz composer and brilliant Grammy-nominated violinist and the leader and founder of the Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble. This episode features several excerpts from Meg's wonderful recent duo album, Lingering, with the Grammy Award-winning jazz pianist and composer Kevin Hayes. This was a wide-ranging conversation, including Meg's musical tribute to Ryuichi Sakamoto, her experiences playing for Cirque du Soleil, some of the challenges she's faced, and about her search for a new spiritual community. She shared with me her thoughts on mentorship and the power of music to create real understanding and connection. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast, and I've also linked the transcript to my website, leahroseman.com. The podcast theme music was commissioned from composer Nick Cold, and you can use the timestamps to navigate the episode. Before we jump into our conversation, I wanted to remind you that this weekly podcast is in season 4, and that I send out an email newsletter where you can get exclusive access to information about upcoming guests. Have a look at the description of this episode, where you'll find all the links, including the merch store and also the support link to buy this independent podcaster a coffee. Now to Meg Okura. Hi, Meg. Thanks so much for joining me here today.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been wonderful listening to your new album, Lingering, and we'll be focusing on that, but hopefully some other of your projects. It might be interesting to start with that. It's quite different in that it's a duo. A lot of what you've done are like with the Pan-Asian Ensemble, bigger sound. Do you want to speak to your relationship with Kevin Hayes and how that got going?
Sure. So I met Kevin Hayes 10 years ago on a gig. Actually, we met on the bus, and he recognized my husband on the way to a gig that we all happened to be on, and my husband recognized sort of like he noticed the chemistry like immediately between Kevin Hayes and I, and so we invited him over to my husband's name is Sam Newsome. He's a great soprano saxophonist, and so we jammed that night after the gig was over, and then Kevin Hayes says, "Meg, I think we should record an album tomorrow," So, and then it took us like 10 years to get it out. But, he's very, very busy with his own, different projects. Even though he has done a lot of different duo projects, he's actually an expert at that as well. For me, as you mentioned, I've been, really busy with the Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble and some like big band writing, which takes up a lot of time out of your life. So, it kind of kept it on back burner. But we occasionally get together and had, a handful of public performances. And then when the pandemic hit, I thought, oh, this would be a good opportunity, for me to do something with the duo project, since all of my Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble concerts and recordings have been canceled. So I wrote a suite specifically for Kevin and I. And it's on the album called 7 Short Pieces. And then, we got together, went to his studio upstate, and, we made like a quick demo, and then we went into a studio, at a separate occasion, and hit the record button for 4 hours. So that's how, we made the album.
Is that kind of a New York moment to meet on a bus?
I think so. I mean, and sometimes, from, going from the west side to east side could be very difficult. And then, oh, I forgot to mention, at the time, Kevin Hayes happened to be living right across the street from us in Harlem. So that was a big, I guess, key point, that we were able to get together and play, and, just invite casually, okay, come over and we'll play. So.
Well, it's an absolutely beautiful album. I love this album so much, but I wanted to sort of get people interested in a lot of it. So I thought that we could include some clips of some of the longer tracks. Mm-hmm. But a nice place to start might be Again and Again.
So Again and Again is a track, is a composition that I wanted to feature like fiddle feel, like something that's American. Mm-hmm. And it's because of Kevin Hayes, because he travels, he tours with James Taylor, and he just recorded, I think, his next album in Nashville. So even though I don't come from that tradition, I wanted to include that kind of for him. Okay. to have that sort of Americana fiddle, Appalachian sound mixed with some blues. So that was a composition that I intentionally created for us. And I also wanted to kind of, showcase the open strings of the violin, which, is not common in jazz. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's, I guess it struck me. It was different than a lot of the compositions on the album. Right. Mm-hmm. You are about to hear Again and Again from Lingering. The link to the album is in the show notes. I grew up in the Jewish Reform tradition, and you're a Reform Jew, and
yes.
So this suite has a lot of references to. You have Hebrew titles, so Maim Korim is another one of your compositions.
Yes. So this I have to give credit to my daughter, who just got bat mitzvahed in January. When she was little, we were on a lake. We were on a gig. Somebody else, and the whole family was there to hang out, and she just sang, "Is the water cold?" And she was like literally a baby, but she said that. So, and I was like, wow, that's very musical. So I used that little phrase, and then I could say I stole the technique from Paganini, Caprices, and then made that into a theme, that. The texture kind of reminded me of the sort of moving water.
You're about to hear Maim Korim from Meg Okura's composition 7 Short Pieces. I'm curious about, we'll jump back into this album, but in terms of your classical training, I have a few questions about it. So you had studied you came from Japan to study at Juilliard, and you were with
Mm-hmm.
Louis Kaplan and Masao Kawasaki.
Yes, correct.
I understand when you were taking a composition or theory course, you had to write a fugue as an assignment. And that was kind of one of the first times you realized that you had a talent for this.
Well, I always liked to compose. I was born into the first generation Protestant household. So my parents, my mom really felt that, they needed to have good organists for the church because they didn't. So as soon as she discovered my perfect pitch, she thought, okay, this is great. She's going to play for the church. So I started kind of improvising on the organ and piano by age 6, and I was always an accompanist. So that's kind of how I started improvising on the instrument. And then I think when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I told my mother that I wanted to become a composer, and she said, girls cannot become composers. So as a good sort of daughter of Protestants, we never question. We're not allowed to question. And so I just, took it as a gospel and believed it, and I never asked anything about me becoming a composer ever again. And so it wasn't until, I became an adult myself and, made my own decisions. I was kind of focused on what I was told to do, which was to become I could pursue the dream of my mother's, which is like to become a concert violinist and, pursue that very narrow path.
Mm-hmm. You'll get into Juilliard, but you were concertmaster and soloist of the Pan-Asian Youth Orchestra when you were a teenager?
Oh, Asian Youth Orchestra.
Yeah.
Yes, just right before I came to the United States. Yes, for 2 years. Yes, I got to play concerto and the concertmaster, which was a very difficult job because it was, even though, it's called youth orchestra, they had professionals up until 30 years of age.
Okay.
And I had to lead, and I didn't speak English very well. So the first year, it was a struggle. And so the following year, I spent about 5 hours a day teaching myself English. Mm-hmm. Then after that summer, I came to the United States. So it was a much easier transition, by that time I, put my first foot on the American soil, I was able to speak English. But so the Asian Youth Orchestra was a life-changing, opportunity for me to meet and travel and make music with other, professionals, young students from all over 9 different Asian countries. And I had to be the leader, which, oh my gosh, was not easy. I mean, also in terms of politics and history too, coming from Japan, not really knowing the kind of atrocity that the Japanese caused during the World War II, and being, informed by my colleagues and be challenged. But that was such a great experience for me, because it kind of really shifted. It just made me question what I had, believed or known, and so that was a totally, completely life-changing experience.
Very interesting. Does that orchestra still exist?
Yes, it does. The founder passed away a few years ago, but his partner is still running it. So I heard at one point it was the largest nonprofit organization in Asia, or if not in the world. It was a huge operation. I mean, international operation.
Wow, very interesting.
So yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, we got to stay at 4-star hotels, and and meet, I got to meet like the king of Malaysia, and I got invited to all these amazing places. As a teenager, that was just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I wanted to include some more short clips from Lingering to point people back to that album, which we started with. Mm-hmm. So this one, Will You Hear My Voice, was actually written by Rachel Bluestein, or
it's okay. So the lyrics, yeah, she was an immigrant. I mean, Hebrew was her second language, but and there's so Hatishma Koli is the Hebrew title of that the words, the poem, and a few different like pop groups have covered it. But the one I knew was very, I felt that it deserved more intimate sounding melody. So I put the melody to to the lyric. But of course, it's a duo version. So I have yet to have a vocal, song version of the melody yet. But that's the melody. So Will You Hear My Voice could be a song. I mean, already has has lyrics, but it's an instrumental duo version of it.
So you were inspired by her song, but you wrote your own melody?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Things that we like Reform Judaism we do all the time, right? Like everything is like that you put your own melody to nusach, like different prayers and existing lyrics, words,
okay,
prayers. So
this is an excerpt from Will You Hear My Voice from the album Lingering with pianist Kevin Hayes. And then, what was your experience like at Juilliard overall?
Overall, I don't know if I could say that I took full advantage of it, but overall, it's very positive. I enjoyed being, surrounded by such, I guess, hardworking, diligent colleagues, smart, and also it made me realize that I was not, I guess, cut out to be, somebody who only played, dead white composers, works under the dictatorship of, just spending a lot of time doing that. I couldn't really envision that because there are others who were so good at it. So I just really admired, those who were genuinely passionate about classical violin playing, and I realized, wow, maybe I was really like pursuing the dream of my mother's. I really didn't feel that it was really my passion. It had never really been my passion. So and at the same time, I've been told by different professors that I should be a composer. Why are you a violin major? So so that was, I guess, coming to America and discovering, living in New York and discovering other kinds of music and meeting a lot of, like well-known jazz musicians, so that was, that's what I did, living in New York. I went out and checked out music that was happening in the 1990s in the village, and So it was the most incredible time of my life. So I enjoyed being in school, but I also enjoyed living in New York in the 1990s. It was such an exciting time for jazz, I think.
Do you remember any particular concerts you heard at that time?
Well, my first first jazz concert I've ever been to was Brian Blade Fellowship at the Blue Note, and I was invited by one of the musicians, and I sat next to Kenny Garrett, and at this sort of like VIP table, and I mean it was so incredible. I mean the music I felt I could really relate to, unlike. So this is the starting point of my jazz entry was not from like a traditional swing music. I came like right at the sort of like height of like the very contemporary sort of mainstream jazz in the 1990s, and that's kind of Brian Blade Fellowship was is sort of epitome of that. And then I had to sort of go backwards and checking out different music, and I soon got invited to play a lot of downtown, on the downtown scene, like with John Zorn's World Static label. And as soon as I started improvising, I was invited into a lot of Jewish world. So because that I could use my ears, and getting into avant-garde jazz is very close to classical sound. So that's kind of how I started. And then I also got to play sub for Vince Giordano's Nighthawks band. So I was playing music from 1920s, and I was also working in the downtown jazz world, which is sort of spearheaded by John Zorn and all these amazing musicians on the east side, East Village.
So you did the BMI Jazz Composers Workshop early on with Jim McNeely and Mike Holliber, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So at that point, had you already been writing quite a bit in jazz language, or was that more of your introduction to that?
So jazz, definitely in a sense, but I had never written, big band pieces, because that's a very specific, and it requires a lot of skills and study. So most people in that who get accepted into BMI are composition people who have jazz composition degrees, coming from some of the most elite conservatories. So I was very lucky that year they decided to take two people who had never written big band charts, Helen Sun and I, and then they were so kind because they took us based on our ability to play our instruments and as players, and they thought maybe they're going to change their policies so that we can be accepted into the workshop to see what we can do, because they thought it would be beneficial for them to have active performers in the group. So I got very lucky to be accepted, even though I had never actually studied jazz or composition in elite or at all. It's not even any school. So
yeah. So in terms of the Pan Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble, it might be interesting for people to hear that in terms of why you started that was not necessarily the best reason.
Right. Yeah. So the reason why, I needed John Zorn actually said, you need to play your own music. And then I really agreed, because by then I felt like, I was exposing myself to a lot of different music for me to learn, to absorb. But when it came time for me to form my own group, he said, just call up the people you know and then start playing. So that's exactly what I did. And in terms of the name of the group, I could always, I could have called it like Meg Okura Quintet or something like that. But then I didn't want to be tied to, like numbers of musicians. And so I picked Ensemble. And that Pan-Asian is the part that I felt like, I didn't want to just write music that sounded Asian, but because of my face, I could call, I was actually very much influenced by how classical ensembles, like Tokyo String Quartet, can play Brahms or, Mozart, any Western music, right? So I said, okay, it's my group, so I can call it Pan-Asian. And also Asia includes, from Japan to all the way to like maybe Israel, Middle East, it's still like within the Asian continent. And I was very much also influenced by, or my experience with the Asian youth orchestra was always sort of my inspiration, like what I witnessed, the experience that, the scenery and it felt very exotic to me when I was traveling Asia. So, and inspiring. So I had that in mind. And also, earlier in my exploration into jazz world, I just wanted to be the next Regina Carter. But my husband said, no, you don't do that, especially in jazz. You really have to cultivate your own music, and you have to have your own voice. So instead of trying to be someone who I wanted to be, or I was trying to be, or I wish I was, I put what I used to think was negative forefront. So they're Asian, I didn't feel like, well, being Asian didn't really help in the jazz world at all. But, I'll put that forefront. And then chamber part is like, okay, I'm sorry, I played the violin, the wrong instrument for jazz, but I put that, okay, this is who I am, it's okay, I'm gonna just tell everybody. And so that's why Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble. And I remember when I first started, like after I graduated, I remember like being referred to as like, Asian violinist or Asian chick violinist. And then I said to them, well, but I don't play the Asian violin. I play the, regular Western violin like everybody else. But then I realized, okay, maybe I should play the Asian violin. So I went to Brooklyn and purchased my Chinese violin in Erhu. And that's kind of how I started. I wanted to kind of use feedback, like how, because I was also really very much interested in, and I did really well in the like electronic world, meaning that using like sound effects and things like that. I had so much fun. I even had did a few gigs with Jason Lindner, who's just superstar of in jazz, playing electronic sounds, and also just amazing musician, just overall. But so I've even done performances like that with Jason Lindner. I was having so much fun, but I felt that as soon as I called myself Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble, the reaction was immediate. Like people reacted positively, and just people just organizations just found me and then booked my group. So, which is amazing. It doesn't really happen like that today, but back then it was just a little bit different. So people found my group, and I was given opportunities, and I felt that that's I could use this group as a platform for my expression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I listened to a couple of your recordings, really beautiful Ima Ima, really.
Thank you.
Very deep and broad and lots of stuff in there. I thought if you wanted to direct people to that album, maybe we could talk about your track Tomiya.
Oh, okay. I have not heard it in a very long time.
It's fantastic, and I know it's
thank you.
It's personal too. So
it's personal, so it has this Japanese like byakubushi scale, using this like Japanese pentatonic scale that's very unique. Because pentatonic scales like ubiquitous, like it's everywhere on earth, but this scale is particularly Japanese. The reason why I say that is because to me it's no special, because I grew up in Japan, but do you know Minchao Fen?
no.
She's a pipa player, world-renowned pipa player. When I play the Japanese scale on the air with the Chinese violin, she's like, "Oh, that's so Japanese." So it's like to anybody who is not Japanese, it's so distinct, like so different. But to me, it's not. And then also my husband, he has written pieces in using that mode, because he thought it was just so radical, so different, when he was walking in Tokyo, and they used that scale in like with the signal for blind people to like traffic lights, they use that scale, a song, a melody. So anyway, so I realized that that's actually very special, even though I didn't think it was special. So I'm using that and incorporating that. And then Tomiya is my father's name is Tomiya. And I actually decided, this was actually part of my fundraiser campaign. I said I will give naming right to the person who has contributed the most. And it happened to be my father. So we contributed, all of my life. There would be no, comparison to anybody else. I mean, to become a classical violinist, you really need so much support, from your parents. I mean, financially, probably mostly from the dad, and then time management, and just for everything else, you just kind of need a mom to really push you, right? I mean, I don't think there's any other way, so I mean, I don't think anyone could become a classical violinist, with on their own, meaning like especially, just the kind of time that you need to spend to practice. And I would be just so surprised if a child, a 4-year-old wanted to sit and practice, something that's physically very uncomfortable, and and the sound that you can produce when you're a beginner. It's not a pleasant experience, unlike some other instruments a little easier as beginners. When it comes to sound, you can press buttons on the keyboard and you don't get horrible sound, right? But the violin, it's a huge process.
Okay, so you feel like you owe a lot to your dad, but he actually supported this album.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're referencing taiko drums.
Mm-hmm. So, and also the concept of my Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble is to create music without an accent, meaning that I felt like when others try to sort of imitate or create Asian sound, a lot of times I can't approve it. It just sounds like an accent to me. Mm-hmm. And I hated that. And the way I look at it is that I was shocked when I think I was watching like a PBS program, and they were interviewing a Japanese doctor, a medical doctor, from Kyoto University, which is like the I guess most prominent, one of the most important medical schools in the world. And I think he might have been a Nobel laureate. And when they dubbed him, they didn't put a subtitle, they dubbed him. PBS put this silly accent on his English, and it was so cringy, and it just shocked me. It just kind of depressed me. So I felt the need to present what could be attributed to like Asian music, Asianness, but I wanted to present it without an accent. I didn't want to leave it up to others to do this. I felt like in a way it's like my mission to present what could be Asian, but in the best possible light, most flattering, I guess, light, I should say. I really wanted to do that, and I hope I'm successful at it.
You're about to hear an excerpt from Tomiya on the Pan-Asian Chamber Jazz Ensemble's album Ima Ima. The link to all the music featured in this episode is to be found in the show notes. So Meg, I'm assuming that one of your more popular albums is the music of Ryuichi Sakamoto?
I guess, yes. I think so. I mean, I hope so, yes. So that was, yes. I could say that, safely say that, Ryuichi Sakamoto is somebody I listened to as a child growing up. Even though my parents, I don't think they really approved of it, but it was my older brother who bought every new release from Yellow Magic Orchestra. So on that, release day, he would line up in front of, the record store, and he would get that. And there are 3 composers in Yellow Magic Orchestra, but I always loved Ryuichi Sakamoto the most. So, and I could recognize it. And I also, because I don't have I didn't grow up listening to any jazz at all. I didn't know what it was that I loved so much. And what it was was the harmony. Ryuichi Sakamoto, was very much influenced by bossa nova and Brazilian music. So the harmony definitely is rich jazz harmony. So I really, really thought it was very special. And I really love the kind of music that makes me feel like, I'm on a like swing set or like a roller coaster, that like, the butterflies you feel in your gut, your stomach. This harmony, Ryuichi Sakamoto's harmony, which is kind of influenced by Brazilian music, really did that to me. So it definitely influenced my writing, kind of subconsciously. I really, listened to it growing up, and something that wasn't part of my studies, right? So that was kind of helpful. So and I also realized that in America, every time I mentioned, among jazz musicians, mentioned Ryuichi Sakamoto, nobody knew who he was. So I was kind of offended that they didn't. So, and I asked actually different players. I asked Helen's son and to join me on this album, to make it almost presented as like jazz standard, meaning that I wanted her to interpret, on the piano, and she's, arguably one of the best, jazz pianist ever. It's certainly in our generation. So I wanted someone like that to partner with me to recreate the world of Ryuichi Sakamoto, and then make it sort of our own. So, and I did the arrangements, but of course in jazz, each player gets to improvise. So, and they have to sort of interpret it. So I really tried to make it as American jazz as possible in some ways for this one.
So he since died, but did the time you made this album, he was still alive?
Correct.
Did you communicate with him about it?
I had to, right?
Yeah.
Because he's more famous than than God in Japan. So I had to go through the proper channel, and I got the blessing, and so we were in touch. I mean, his people, my people from Japan, and it was so I had to go through a proper channel, and it's not easy. Even when we performed at Winter Jazz Fest this past January. It just required a lot of care and thoughtfulness and permission. I mean, I couldn't just so we were in touch, and he was certainly aware of the project, and I'm just so grateful that he gave me an okay. He trusted me enough to recreate his music. He didn't think I was going to ruin his music.
So that album features Randy Brecker. Okay.
No, Randy Brecker will be featured in my upcoming album.
That's what I'd read.
The Pan Age and Chamber Jazz Ensemble.
That's what I'd read.
Yes, the large ensemble. Yes, it's been recorded over a year ago, almost. Yeah.
But he's the brother of Michael Brecker, who was one of your mentors.
Correct. Yes, I had the opportunity to tour with Michael Brecker Quintet, and that was also one of those experiences that it was really incredible, because you get to play two concerts per night, right? And you get to share stage, and I had a solo in front of Gil Goldstein on the back and Michael Brecker, and then I had to say what I want to say on stage in front of those very critical audience members, and very supportive Michael Brecker, and amazing other musicians. So that was so incredible. I'm so sorry that he had to pass. It's been very, very sad, but I'm grateful to have had the opportunity, kind of like last minute, because I was already very much a fan of, like Brecker Brothers and that sound. In the 1990s, I listened to those albums almost daily.
Okay.
So yeah, I got to perform and work with my hero. So, and now, Randy Brecker played on my interpretation of African Skies, and maybe something else too on the upcoming album, but it should come out soon enough.
Yeah.
But I don't have the date yet, so. But it's I'm really, really excited about it. It's already I've used some of the tracks as work samples, and I've gotten many honors from it. So
okay.
Yeah.
And you have a prize-winning new work, Silent Screams, an anthem for the unheard, which you just premiered, right?
Yes, it's not. It actually was a commission. So I received the honor, the prize, from the International Society of Jazz Arrangers and Composers, ISJAC, Fundamental Freedom Commission Prize. So I wrote it for the prize, and I received the prize, and I got to do the world premiere at the symposium in Nashville.
And it's for violin and jazz orchestra, so you were
Correct.
Playing.
8. So it's almost like a concerto, but it also features the tenor saxophone from the orchestras. So I was able to work with Jeff Goffin, who was a saxophonist for probably most known for Dave Matthews Band, and he's a world-renowned saxophonist and wind player. He also does doubles, so he's a jazz musician, but also he, does a lot of other work.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I was curious because you can still keep a bit of a foot in the classical world, like in terms of your composition. Have you written any sort of crossover pieces?
Yes, so during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, I was commissioned by wonderful clarinetist Tasha Warren
Mm-hmm.
from Michigan State University. So Michigan State University gave her the funding to commission me and a few other wonderful jazz composers, Paquito de Rivera and Pascal Leboeuf. And so these are like jazz composers to write for this the classical group with Tasha Warren and Dave Eggar. So those are the two, sort of a duo.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we were able to add ourselves. So I decided to, actually they invited me. They really wanted me to be a part of the ensemble. So I wrote a trio for, bass clarinet / clarinet, cello and violin. And then it's titled Phantasmagoria. And since then, I think it won several competitions in the classical world.
I listened to it. It's really good.
Oh, thank you so much. So and then that kind of helped me, or invited me back into the classical world. So we played like a Messiaen, or and the other day I think we played Dvorak, which I hadn't done in a very, very long time. Almost like since Juilliard, I haven't really played classical chamber music, but now because of my composition, I'm getting back into it, and I have a new appreciation for dead white composers. I mean, I love them so much. I love their work. They inspired me so much, and so it's a lot of fun for me to perform other people's work. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I really look forward to writing more classical compositions because there's, in some ways, more needs for it, right? There's, for new music, Tasha felt that there aren't just enough chamber music for her and her colleagues to play, for especially for the bass clarinet. And so I feel that I could contribute more to the contemporary classical world, whereas in jazz everybody's a composer. Everybody composes. So in order to be successful as a composer, you kind of have to you write for big bands, which is very similar to classical in a way, because we write a lot of written materials and have smaller sections of solo improvisation, but then you also write the background. So anyway, so writing for large jazz ensembles kind of made me I guess aware of writing for classical chamber music and classical music, and I'd love to maybe someday write for symphonic orchestra and symphonic jazz as well. Then that will kind of tie nicely with my whole entire life. I'm 50 years old, and I kind of need to make sense of what I've done in the past and where I would like to go to. So now I definitely because I was so busy trying to become a jazz musician, because it's so difficult to be able to play, like, let's say, chord changes, to get to become it's one thing to be an improviser, but to be able to actually play chord changes, in the manner that those jazz musicians do, takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of patience, and so it just took a long time for me to get to where I am today. So now I feel that that I could start embracing, writing for other people more, I think.
Yeah, I knew about Phantasmagoria, and first of all, would it be okay if we included a clip of that?
Oh, of course, yes, absolutely, please.
And because of that piece, I was wondering, actually, if you'd written for orchestra, since that's what I do, and chamber music. So I'm glad to hear you're going to be doing more. That's great.
I would love to. Yes, I'm looking for more opportunities. I mean, I right now have like 3 commissions, but I should be able to work fast by now. So anyways, but like maybe after that, or simultaneously, I would love to start doing more classical work. I think among 3 commissions, one is completely jazz, the other one is like chamber, it's like chamber orchestra but in the jazz context, and then the other one is chamber music, classical. So I am doing more classical, and I would love to do I'm definitely eager to work with classical ensembles.
This is an excerpt from Meg's composition Phantasmagoria, performed by Tasha Warren and Dave Eggar with Meg Okura. You can buy the sheet music from Meg's website, linked in the description, and the full track is linked in the show notes as well. Maybe we could talk a little bit about parenting and music education, because my partner is also a musician, and we brought up kids. They're adults now, but I'm always often curious to hear people's take on it. How are you guys going about that with your daughter?
So this was my strategies. So when we first decided to start a family at all, because I was never gonna be ready anyways, and then the clock was ticking already, so I was gonna just do it. We were gonna just have a baby no matter what. But then I had this reservation, like how do we want to raise our child? And I could not imagine not giving her the best opportunities and best education possible, and raising her, or actually could have been a boy or a girl, right? And in Harlem, and it was just very challenging. It felt challenging. I did so much, a lot of research, and read a lot of statistics, and so but by the time we found out that we were having a girl, we were starting to feel that maybe we can do something radical, and that we wanted to raise her in maybe a foreign, like exchange, like foreign culture, and then have like another language and things like that, because that's what my husband and I both really, like I'm in a foreign land in a way, and he felt that he was, well, as a jazz musician, he traveled all over the world, and he's seen like a hut in Africa to fanciest hotels in Europe and Asia. And so anyway, so we consider, we didn't want her to just have one thing as her identity. So and at the time I felt that maybe we had this opportunity. We can maybe perhaps raise our black daughter Jewish. And so we made this decision that I study, and then go through the process of conversion, and then my daughter and I converted together so she can go to, she can be raised in this culture that we weren't even familiar with. But in New York, you have, this incredible opportunity to choose, right? We had the choice, and so we decided that. So my daughter converted when she was 2 years old and went to JCC, nursery school, and so it's been quite a journey. And so that was my strategy, because I felt like I wasn't going to be enough, and coming here alone, I had no blood relative in America, and I wanted her to grow up in a community, and also in a culture that education was very important, and that it was required. And I wanted our daughter also, because she was a girl. The reason why she had to be a girl for us to do this was because I wasn't really sure about making the permanent decision on her, but if it was a boy, we would have to have circumcision, and I wasn't really sure. I didn't want to make that permanent decision for him. So because it was a girl, we knew that she could change her mind at 13, whether she wanted to still be Jewish or not. And it's all about questioning. She could question, and she could, it was up to her, regardless. And then she wouldn't have that, we wouldn't have had that burden, so we decided to do that. And so she was, she went to Hebrew school and JCC, and then also I made sure that she got into, some of the top schools, so that I can be a musician, and I can kind of almost slack, the school was gonna, really take care of her, meaning that their education is so good. She goes to Spence School, and it's just an incredible, she is receiving an incredible education there. And I admire all the mothers and fathers, the parents. And so even though I'm not, the most amazing mother in the world, she's in good hands. So that was my strategy, so I can compose and go on the road. And she's growing up really, she's doing really, really well. She's thriving, and I kind of envy her life. So that was my strategy. I don't know if it's called cheating, but I kind of cheated,
So
that.
So it's a residential school?
No.
Okay.
But her environment is just incredible, and the school teachers, they're just really, really amazing. So it's one of the top, I guess, schools in the world. So but in order for her to get in, I did tiger mom for about a year. I did work very, very hard. I gave up everything. I gave up all my gigs, composition for 1 year. We went to a lot of interviews. I did a lot of research. And she got into many of the most elite schools, so that we can just keep on living our musician life, after that. So, and it's working out really well. So I'm really grateful.
So what is that kind of coaching involve? Like just early literacy, or?
No, I actually downloaded the criteria that they had. The school was supposed to the nursery school was supposed to evaluate. So it's more like I knew the report, because it's you have to, they put the report together to send it to the school, right? So I was able to download the information, the form that they were supposed to fill out. So so they're gonna evaluate, so being able to stand in line, things like that.
Okay.
So, but and also drawing was an important part, as I taught her how to draw. So then that was one of the schools. They called me right away after she had her audition, whatever, I don't know what they call it, play dates. They said, she's only 4 years old, but her drawing ability is at that of 80 years old. Like, this is crazy, So I definitely did help her, guide her. It was nothing crazy, but I just let her try things that she will be looked at. So and then musically, she got into special music school, and I had the information from somebody else that they, you play 2 notes, and then they ask the child to sing the lower voice, and then so I tested her, and then the first first time she could only sing the top one, and I told her that this is the lower note, and then after that she was able to do it. So anyway, so that kind of little bit of training, I didn't go crazy on it, but I just helped her a little bit, guided her a little bit, so when she's asked to do something, she knows what she's being asked to do. But those are the kind of things I did in order for her to but I have to give her the credit too, because she always said, well, I'm the one who got in, I'm the one who did all the the play dates, right? So, and then she's working also very hard, she's in 7th grade. So but I'm kind of letting her do her own work. We don't have any tutors or crazy scheduling. I mean, she is a she is self-motivated. So we don't have to do anything. She just gets up early in the morning. She gets ready, get really prettied up. Every morning she gets up by 5:30 and then gets ready, and then sometimes she does her homework. I mean, they work very hard. Those kids work very, very hard. And then they just she leaves home without saying goodbye, so I just have to get up from my bed and run downstairs and say goodbye. So yes, so yeah, I'm so happy that she's in 7th grade. She doesn't really need me so much anymore.
So no violin lessons for hers?
No, we tried. I mean, so this is what happened. We bought her a little violin, right? And then we wanted her to try, and then she was making terrible sounds. And then so I was showing her how to play with my violin, and she says, "Mommy, my violin broken. Give me yours." So, but she never really took it seriously. So she never really learned. But she took piano lessons with, and it was terrible because I used to judge parents when I was a teacher. When I was giving lessons, like good parents, bad parents. And then I never dreamed that I was gonna be that bad parent. I was apologizing to the teacher every week. It was just so difficult, so cringy. It was just, and then she I remember I was there. She was in kindergarten, and then she told her piano teacher that there is no wrong note. Piano is an art. So anyway, so she really wasn't. Short story. It's not like we didn't try. We gave her the opportunity. She didn't take up on it. So, but she's very musical and talented. But she doesn't like to take traditional lessons. She wants to learn everything from YouTube. Mm-hmm. So she slows down the tempo on YouTube and plays whatever the instrument she wants to play, and then it goes 75%, 100%, and 125%, so until she can perfect it. So I don't know, I feel like music education will probably change a lot in the next 10-20 years. Mm-hmm. It will not look like the way we learned it, and I have to be okay with that. I mean, I have feelings about it, and but maybe with technology and with the environment, and the access to other things that kids are competing with, other more interesting things, and the options that they have. Sitting in a practice room for 10 hours a day, focused may not may be very, very difficult today. Even though they have more access to more information, which I envy. They can more easily access to a most incredible technology and a lot of information. But the reason why not many people are quite taking advantage of that and is because I think there are just so many other things that are more interesting to them. So what do you think? Tell me, what do you think is the education and lesson, things like that today?
Well, just in terms of access to music, I often talk about this with people. It's so much is available, but when we were growing up, there was, I'm a little bit older than you, but there was more limited access. So you had your favorite albums you'd listen to over and over again.
Yes, over and over. Yes, exactly.
But you had more focus because there wasn't all this choice.
Right.
So now there's a wealth of choice. So people still go down the rabbit holes, which is great. But I think there's so many distractions. I kind of feel sorry for the younger generation in some ways.
Yes,
because of that.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, that's how I feel. Yes. And then we probably wouldn't have been who we are today had we been in that environment, right? Maybe I couldn't have been able to accomplish as much as a string player, right? Because it just takes a lot of patience.
Yeah. Definitely. It's hard to know, right? And also, as part of your suite on this album, there was Shamaim.
Shamaim, yes. So Shamaim means skies or heavens, and I am quoting a very famous prayer, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. So not in the sense that's like really like literal, like prayer, but in a kind of like in the back of my head, sort of just appreciation for like nature and just when I think of the word like Shamaim, like the sky, but it's the word comes from like two words like Esh and Maim, like water and sun, and like I just think of like this sky with like clouds and sun and its brightness and actually Kevin Hayes and I had a tour. We went to Hawaii, and Hawaii was just all about that. I felt like, wow, I just love the skies, and we don't see that. You know what, in New York all our skies are framed.
Yeah,
it's like squares as a frame, so when I see the open skies, it's like, oh my gosh, it just really moves me, and in a way, and it just makes me think of the world like more spiritual, like like celestial or ethereal world that I don't often think about, So skies definitely reminds me of that.
This is an excerpt from Shamaim, from 7 short pieces, with Kevin Hayes on the album Lingering. Hi, just a short break from the episode, which I hope you're enjoying so far. I wanted to let you know that I have a new way you can support this independent podcast through a beautiful collection of merch with a very cool, unique, and expressive design from artist Steffi Kelly. You'll find that link in the description of the episode. If you want to check out over 100 episodes you may have missed, in addition to your podcast player or YouTube, I have an extensive website, leahroseman.com, with show notes, transcripts, the complete catalog of episodes, and you can sign up there for my weekly newsletter to get access to sneak peeks of upcoming guests. Please do share your favorite episodes with your friends, follow me on social media and share my posts, and if you can spare a few dollars to help support the series, that would be amazing. You'll find that link in the show notes along with the merch store. I'm an independent podcaster and I really do need the help of my listeners. Now, back to the episode.
Right.
I was curious about your ideas about intuitive versus analytical as a composer and as an improviser, and as your knowledge has grown of a very complicated jazz harmony. How does that work for you?
So I think to this day, I use my gut as sort of an indicator. It has to move me. It has to. So I have a hard time. I mean, I can start with a concept, but eventually I really rely upon my ears and how my music makes me feel. So sometimes even some of the music that I've written or some of the music I've heard, I've known, if I imagine those notes in my head alone, I could start crying. The harmony that knows exactly, I can hear it. I mean, because I think one of the things I'm grateful for my mother is because I have perfect pitch, so I can actually create music in my head, within my head, without actually hearing things. So that kind of music, if I can write music that is legitimately just by thinking about those notes, move me. So yeah, I use that sort of as a parameter, to judge my music. And not all music have to be moving. It could be invigorating or sad or angry. Could be an emotion, but something that to me it has to be genuine. I think it's because I'm not so academic. I did study jazz harmony, to study, but I think as a person, I'm just really an emotional person. I like music functioning in a way that's not so much to satisfy that here, but more your soul and your heart. So also I think growing up in a church, being a church organist, and doing so much playing in religious and worship service, I know what my function is and what the sound of the violin or the harmony you create can do to human soul. I see people crying all the time, and I kind of, you can call it mind control, right? But I know, I could kind of touch, and I wouldn't say I maybe the instrument, the sound, the vibration, and how I create a improvisational line, but that leaps, this way, and also sometimes it kind of, I play in a way that's really genuine and it's from my heart to the point that I want to cry myself. So I feel like that's my job, to bring something that's very deep and soulful and real. I don't perform. I'm a part of a team, and I play music in a way that's helpful. So that's kind of how I approach it. So I learned that from my experience, and I use that in anytime I perform for anybody. I try to really access my heart, my like gut, my soul, instead of using here. Because use here when you practice, especially jazz, when you put all that knowledge, right? But when you are in front of others, I think it will be almost it's just, it won't be fair if we were playing from here, from intellectual place, and that only that, because humans are coming to your space, to a place, and to hear you, who you are, and then to experience something. So if I'm not genuine and playing from my heart, and that's also, I guess, I can attribute that to classical violin playing, because in jazz, so much of it is a lot of hard, like practicing and learning, right? So, but I know in classical, you write, you perform notes that are written by somebody else, but you really put your soul into it for on each note. So I think I find that helpful for me to when I'm playing jazz, like when I'm improvising, I definitely try to do that. And when I'm not able to do that, when I'm too nervous, or when I'm worried about other people, that's to me not successful. And when I'm too intellectual, like trying to impress somebody else, which is really important, and I think it's really valuable, because we need that as jazz musicians to be validated by our peers. But audience members, they don't know what we are doing, So I feel that it's extremely, extremely important to me to actually play my heart out. So that's kind of what I try to do. And I don't think I could have really thought of, my improvisational performance that way without coming from classical, having had the, experience playing like recitals and concertos. I think that's very, very helpful.
I did want to include a couple of clips, like Lingering, the title track. Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So this one was actually not written just for the duo. Actually, I meant it to be a jazz waltz, to be played, with like a quartet or something, or anybody can play. So this is one of few pieces that's a lead sheet, meaning that it has a melody and the chord changes, not like designated so much piano parts and violin parts. So, and it's sort of like a romantic, I guess, jazz waltz, and it's about wanting to linger, not wanting to let go of whatever. So that's what that melody is about, just wanting to stay a little bit longer and be in a space. And also, I'm kind of channeling, the feelings that I used to have as a young person, like have those like feelings of like romance, or I don't know, there's a word in Japanese, seishun. I don't know, it's like it means like blue spring. I don't know, it's something about like that kind of melancholic, romantic feeling that I miss, I guess. Something that I don't really have so much today, and if I forget, as women, I think once you become a mother, you almost like let go of that world completely, and you become, I don't know, not irrelevant, but like, but I still kind of crave those kind of like feelings of like romance, or like, so that's what Lingering is about, like, ooh, like don't go, like let's, stay here, kind of. So
yeah, well, becoming a parent, I think for men or women, I mean, it's like a lot of your focus goes to take care of this creature, and we're already split in all our different identities. So I think it's just another piece of it, right, being taken up.
Yeah. So I guess I'm always I have been like afraid of not, having those feelings, that like we used to have, and then through music, I think I use music to kind of recreate that within me, instead of like doing anything else. I feel like we are lucky that we can almost like within ourselves, we can be like actresses, right, or actors, like just kind of enjoy that feeling in that sort of the pure form, instead of like having to do something, differently. Just it's kind of like my imagination, imaginary world I'm creating in my head.
This is an excerpt from the title track, Lingering. And I know you've played electric violin as well, but mostly you're choosing to play acoustic.
So I still do a lot of like using that effect pedals. That could be, so for me that could be also like an expression. So I still do it a lot, and a tool for composition, because I can play like like 4 notes chords. I can create chords with that double, like and then I use octave pedals or 2 octave to go down, and delays and reverbs and all these things are part of who I am as a violinist, but I'm starting to scale down on it. But for certain bands that I play with, I definitely, that's the sound that I require to contribute. And also a lot of times I use it because I'm the in certain situations I'm the guitar player and violinist and fiddler, and an orchestra I use pad sounds that's very rich, so I am functioning. But I guess as an artist I'm definitely scaling back on it, and also because I get to now compose for a 17-piece orchestra plus me, so I can do so much with those instruments that but I love both. I love playing electric violin with a lot of sounds. I really truly enjoy it, and so but also I appreciate the acoustic sound and writing for other instruments. So
you played in the Scorchio quartet with Martha Mook for a while.
I have, yes. When I was, so basically, I think towards the by the time I started like master's program at Juilliard, I was just very much interested in anything that wasn't classical. So I just played with anybody and everybody. So I also played in a serious quartet, and I played with so many different groups. At one point, I had to create my own. But until then, I was just in so many different groups, and I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
I mentioned that because she was featured on the podcast recently.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you were on the David Bowie's album Heathen with that quartet, and I believe he sponsored your green card application.
Yes, he was one of the sponsors, and that was another motivation because I really needed to, like you can pick different paths, right? A lot of people, some people I envy. They were so focused. They knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they only did that. And then sometimes I feel like, well, looking back, maybe I should have started my own path a little earlier, like waiting. But I spent good first 10 years after school, just playing with other people, just playing with different groups. So I can get my green card, that was very important to me. And also, I needed to absorb as much music as possible because I didn't grow up here. So, and I grew up in a church setting, and I really, and I was a good classical violinist. So I felt the need to expose myself to as many different genres of music as possible. And in New York, especially back in the 1990s and early 2000s, there are just so many opportunities. There are a lot of recording sessions, and just I was lucky enough to be invited to do so many different things with so many different artists in different genres. So just be able to improvise a little bit really gave me a lot of different opportunities. So I'm very grateful for that. And with Scorchio, I think, we definitely did some, a lot of improvisation and a lot of written, playing a lot of written music as well. And I think we plugged in, but not in the way that, we didn't really do much. I developed, my electric violin sounds on my own too. Mostly, actually, the biggest opportunity I had was playing with a band called Pharaoh's Daughter, a Jewish Middle Eastern world music band, and there I got to do a lot of fun stuff, and even though the scale and it's world music oriented, but that sound itself, we could use a lot of electronic sound, so I got to experiment using my pedals. And
I believe with that group you went on a Latin American tour with some stories.
Yeah. yes we have. So yes we definitely, I got to tour all over. We played all over America, and so we went to South America, Brazil and Colombia, and it was crazy fun. So that was the only time I have been asked to play the violin at the airport security. So and it was crazy. I've been to South America before, with my own group, but this was very special. Got to tour with trumpet Avishai Cohen, and Jason Lindner was on the gig too. So it's so we had some good memories.
What happened when you played at the airport?
Oh no, the security, because see, in those countries Colombia, they were just, I guess the security is kind of strict. They were poking every cloth suitcase with big weapon things, and they needed to see everything. And of course, sometimes I get asked to open my instrument and show it to them, but this time they're like, okay, it looks like an instrument, but can you actually play it? So I think they were just kind of playing with us, but I got to play it for the security. So yeah.
And Meg, you played with Cirque du Soleil for a few shows?
Yes. 3 shows. Yes, I did. First one was Varikai, and the second one was Wintuck, and the third one was Corteo. Yes. So that was something that I guess that, people recommended me for the Cirque du Soleil company, and when, because sometimes, some bad things happen to players, right? So they need subs. So the first time I went, actually I subbed for my hero. He unfortunately had a terrible car accident after that, so he's no longer performing. But Ludwig Gertland was the violinist, and he really inspired me, as a jazz violinist. And he was in that playing that show. So and I went to, where was it, San Diego, and then learned the show like within, I don't know, a few days, I guess. And they had some written music, and then they put you in a full costume, head to toe costume, and then you get in your mic, and then you go on stage, go improvise, do this, and then I would be improvising, of course, to the music, but watching the acrobatics, and then try to create lines that matches the act. And then sometimes it's super short, sometimes they give up, like something that doesn't go, and sometimes when something doesn't go well, they try again and again, so some solos get longer and longer. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, so that was my Cirque du Soleil experience, and I think I learned how to do like good makeup, because you had to learn the makeup. I mean that makeup was insane. I had to be some kind of animal that doesn't exist on Earth, so so anyway, so yeah, so that's another like electric violin gig that I enjoyed doing earlier on my career.
So what do you think you learned watching all those circus performers through those shows?
I appreciated perfection, meaning that they would play like thousands of shows, right? And then every time they get together, I watched, like each act has a coach, and then they watch the video and they scrutinize everything. I mean, after 1,000 shows, like, can you just like slack off, But they don't, and they're so serious. And I was also disciplined, like they would, some couples have, worked together and they have like babies, and I saw like literally like babies this small being asked to like train, like they're training babies. And then also I saw jugglers practicing trumpet every day, so it was like the world I had never seen before. Wow. And also, it's about perfection, but also about flexibility and performing, right? You perform for the audience and entertain, and you really have to be quick, in your thinking, and just adaptable, because something happens to this person, like, he just broke his ankle, like, things happen. And then today this act is going to be longer, today we cut this one. So it was very interesting. So, and also when a violinist is absent or something, they don't just get another violinist, because that's not what it's about. They would get the guitarist to cover this melody, and this wind player to cover that melody, and so is gonna play this solo, that solo. That's how kind of, so that's very, very different from growing up playing classical music, up until I got my master's in violin performance still. So that was my entire education was completely in classical world, and being exposed to the world of like entertainment, right? And circus and stemming from street arts, and like like a stage performance like Vegas, like almost like that kind of entertainment world. Everything was new to me, and so though I couldn't stay. I just couldn't stay. Though it was fun, at a time, but I couldn't sign a 3-year contract that they offered. Instead, I did 3 months, and I threatened my my boyfriend at a time. I mean, my husband today, that if I don't get a ring now, like within a week, I'm gonna run off with a circus. and I signed the 3-year contract, and then I somehow got a ring out of him right before the tour. So so I came back to New York, and yeah, I came back to New York, and it was rather I guess not underwhelming, but New York is what we pay, what we give up for music or for good music to live in New York is incredible. I think I've always felt like, oh my gosh, I could have had all these amazing things, like a swimming pool, and it was, like my lifestyle with Cirque du Soleil, was amazing. I got spoiled, and when I came back to Brooklyn, to my apartment, it was a good apartment, but but we still choose to pursue jazz, or music in New York, and giving up everything else, all the other possibilities. And I'll be lying if I hadn't questioned my decision, a few times in my life, for the last 30 years, sometimes, like, I wonder, what I would have been doing, or what kind of lifestyle I would have had. But no, I'm very happy where I am at now, but it wasn't always easy because I had to become a beginner again, right? As a jazz, to be accepted, to feel accepted in the jazz world, I had to become, from had been a concertmaster in many orchestras, growing up, and then from there and playing solo to like a complete nobody, complete beginner, like, at the age like 23, 24, and just be a total beginner, wasn't easy. And had I known how hard it was going to be for me to become a jazz musician, I don't think I would have tried. Good thing I had no idea. So then I had to, and then I also, my plan was to study jazz harmony enough for me to become a very good composer, like the best composer, best musician I can ever achieve. And that was my goal. But then I realized studying a little bit of jazz was completely meaningless in jazz. So I learned everything very slowly. So another thing I really want to start thinking about giving back to, especially the classical world. Something that I now finally have the room for me to, I mentor for Juilliard School now, and one of the many mentors. But at my age, I feel like, wow, I wish I had a mentor. I didn't. So mentor, so I had teachers, many great teachers, but I would like to start thinking about, helping someone who was, who is in the shoe that I used to be in, so I can help navigate this sort of unknown world, and without wasting too much time. Because I think I went, it just took me a very, very, very long time, so.
Yeah, I knew about your mentoring through Juilliard, and I was curious what form that takes.
Oh, so it could be so many different things over the years. So right now I have a guitarist, and he's, graduating, and basically, I've invited him to, to our place, and just introducing him to my network of people, and which is like a treat to him, right? Because he's a student, and he gets to meet some of the most accomplished musicians in the in the industry, even though he's a classical guitarist. And then we can talk about some personal things. And then I've had one student who, her biggest problem was that she has never had a difficult time in her life. Everything she has ever done, she has always been successful, and her parents are super supportive, and she's grateful. She's so happy, that she's so worried that her life has never been hard. So that was very interesting. And then I was starting a chamber music career, so needed guidance in a business side, or Or another student, she was a dancer. She, it was all about personal life, navigating through school system and also the culture. In the dance department was quite different. It's little, I think it's maybe music socially, maybe music is a little easier. I mean, of course, it depends on the situation, but dancers seem to have, they're required to do different things compared to music students. Music students, we never had to raise money for our concerts, for instance. Like we would be asked to play for maybe a fundraiser or something. But dancers, they really create the whole show on their own. And they, so the thing I did at Michigan State University is I worked with both jazz and classical department. And so together, and, so I feel like I'm in a unique position to be able to, because I know curiosity is there, and help them, I guess, not a shortcut. There's no shortcut, but, not waste too much time on trying to figure out, because I felt that I needed to do that. I spent a lot of time not exactly knowing how to approach learning jazz as a classically trained violinist.
Yeah. I know that quite a few of the listeners of this podcast are fairly young, like teenagers and early 20s, which makes me very happy, because one of my motivations for doing this is that, because I didn't have mentors, and I grew up in this small box and didn't realize how wide the world of music can be.
Other people do other things to help, but using what we already know, what we have, to give back, I think it's the most efficient way. And also I think music is healing. I know it sounds so corny, right? Cheesy, but I feel that, like, genuinely feel when we perform together, it's really connecting. We have this goal of creating harmony together, and I think it's really beautiful that this is what we truly care about. Like, that's the only thing we're actually interested in. And the world today, we live in such a divided world, which I didn't envision it was going to be like this growing up, but we actually do live in this seemingly very divided world. But I don't think we are. I truly, like, if we put, I guess, if we put us, musicians in the same room and created music, just the practice of, jazz, for instance, we let others shine during their solo, and we completely support. And then there's a chance for me to shine, and then, take turns, and everything is about kind of like taking turns and supporting others. And even like a mistake, we can try to cover it up with doing something repetitively to make it make the mistake meaningful or purposeful. And like, I don't know, there's just a lot in also like the world of improvisation. And like when I hear, for instance, when we are performing in New York, even in like a large space like Roulette, you hear noises from the street, and then ambulance, and police cars, and you never know. But or sometimes somebody's phone rings. And what I love about being a jazz musician is that we can incorporate that into our improvisation, and we don't have to always like be judgmental, and it's like, you did something wrong, you're a bad person because you forgot to turn off your phone. But like, we can have fun with it, and we can always just make things work and create harmony and create meaning. So I feel kind of hopeful, and also at the same time, like, okay, why should we be just keeping that to ourselves, right? We should be able to share it and encourage it. And I would like the world to see us creating harmony together. So
beautifully said. Well, thanks so much for this today. Really appreciated this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do share this with your friends, and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. The link is in the description. Have a wonderful week.